The stars were cold and distant in the empty space beyond the Kepler 442 system. Commander Velthar stood on the bridge of the Veltharian ship Eternal Vigilance, watching the dark void through the main screen. His blue skin glowed softly in the dim light of the command center. The ship moved slowly through space, searching for new worlds and new species to add to the Galactic Consortium's records. "Commander?" called Science Officer Catherine from her station. Her voice was excited. "I am picking up something strange on our long-range sensors." Velthar walked over to her console. The screen showed a large object floating in space, dark and silent. It was massive, much bigger than their own ship. The shape was odd, too. Instead of the smooth, curved lines that all civilized ships use, this one was full of sharp angles and thick armor plating. "What is it?" Velthar asked. "Unknown, sir. The ship is not in our database. It appears to be powered down, but the hull is intact. No signs of battle damage." Catherine's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "The design is very strange. It looks like it was built for war." Velthar looked at the image more carefully. The ship was gray and black, covered in what looked like weapon ports and armor. It reminded him of pictures he had seen of ancient warships from his homeworld's violent past, but those were from thousands of years ago before his people learned to live in peace. "Size?" he asked. "Approximately 3 kilometers long, sir. Mass readings suggest extremely dense construction materials. The hull appears to be made of some kind of reinforced metal alloy." Tactical Officer Zethmar looked up from his station. "Commander, I recommend we maintain our distance. This vessel's design suggests a highly aggressive species." Velthar considered this. The Galactic Consortium had met many species over the centuries. Some were friendly, others took time to understand peace, but all of them eventually joined the great community of civilized worlds. This ship, however, looked different. It looked dangerous. "Can you tell if anyone is alive on board?" Velthar asked. Catherine ran another scan. "I'm getting very faint life signs, but they are weak. It is possible the crew is in some kind of sleep state. Many species use hibernation for long space travel." "Any response to our presence?" "None, sir. The ship appears to be completely inactive." Velthar made his decision. "Send a standard greeting message on all frequencies. Universal peace protocols." The communications officer began broadcasting the standard consortium greeting. It was a simple message that had been used successfully with dozens of species. It basically said they came in peace and wanted to talk. They waited. Seconds turned into minutes. The dark ship gave no response. "Try again," Velthar ordered. "Still nothing." "Commander," Zethmar said quietly, "perhaps we should report this to Consortium Command and request a proper first contact team." Velthar shook his head. "We are explorers. This is what we do." He looked at the strange ship again. Something about it made him uncomfortable, but he couldn't say what. "Catherine, begin a detailed sensor scan. I want to know everything about this vessel." "Sir, scanning an unknown ship without permission might be considered hostile by some species," Zethmar warned. "They are not responding to our messages. Standard protocol allows for basic scans to determine if assistance is needed." Velthar was getting curious about the mysterious ship. "Begin scanning." Catherine activated the ship's powerful sensor array. Beams of energy reached out across space, touching the dark hull of the unknown vessel. Almost immediately, her instruments began showing strange readings. "This is very unusual, Commander. The ship's hull is incredibly thick, much thicker than any ship I have ever seen. And the materials? I have never encountered anything like this. It is not just armor, it is like the entire ship is one giant weapon." "What do you mean?" Velthar asked. "Look at these readings, sir. The ship has multiple layers of armor, each one designed to stop different types of weapons. Energy weapons, projectile weapons, explosive weapons. And beneath the armor I am detecting what appears to be massive weapon systems." Velthar felt a chill run down his spine. "How many weapons?" "I cannot get an exact count, but there are hundreds of weapon ports. Maybe thousands. Some of them are huge, sir, much larger than anything we have ever seen." "Life signs?" Catherine adjusted her instruments. "Approximately 8,000 life forms, all in hibernation. But Commander, these readings are very strange." "Strange how?" "The biological scans show creatures with very dense bone structure, multiple organ systems and brain patterns that suggest, well, they suggest a predatory intelligence." The bridge fell silent. In all their years of exploration, the Veltharians had never encountered a truly predatory species. All civilized races had evolved beyond such primitive behavior. "Could the scans be wrong?" Velthar asked. "I have run them 3 times, sir. The results are consistent. Sethmar stood up from his station. Commander, I strongly recommend we withdraw immediately and report this to Consortium Command. But before Velthar could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The lights on the bridge changed from soft blue to harsh red warning lights. What is happening? Velthar demanded. The unknown ship, sir, Catherine said, her voice shaking. It is powering up. On the main screen, they could see lights beginning to appear along the hull of the dark ship. What had looked like a dead hulk moments before was coming to life. Systems that had been dormant were awakening. Energy readings are increasing rapidly, Catherine reported. Reactor output is climbing to levels I have never seen before. Weapon systems? All of them, sir. Every weapon on that ship is coming online. Velthar felt fear creeping into his chest. How long before they are fully powered? At this rate, approximately 10 minutes, sir. The commander looked at his crew. They were all staring at the screens, watching as more and more lights appeared on the alien ship. Whatever was inside that vessel was waking up, and Velthar had the terrible feeling that scanning it had been a very bad mistake. Sir, the communications officer called out. I am receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. Put it through. The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing the outside of the alien ship, it now showed the inside. The bridge was dark and functional, very different from their own comfortable command center. And sitting in the captain's chair was something that made Velthar's blood run cold. It looked almost like them, but wrong somehow. Scarred and dangerous, with metal parts replacing flesh on half its face. Its eyes were cold and calculating, like a predator studying prey. I am Captain Dongwu of the human vessel Indomitable Will, the creature said, in a voice that was calm, but somehow threatening. You have been scanning our ship. Please explain why. Captain Dongwu opened his eyes as the emergency lights flashed red throughout his quarters. The hibernation pod hissed open, releasing him from the deep sleep he had been in for months. His body ached as he sat up, the cybernetic parts of his face automatically adjusting to the light. Captain de Bridge, came Lieutenant Boram's voice through the ship's speakers. We have a situation, sir. Dongwu pulled on his uniform and walked quickly through the corridors of the Indomitable Will. All around him, crew members were waking up from their own hibernation pods. The ship was alive with activity as 8,000 humans began their revival procedures. When he reached the bridge, Boram was already at her station, running diagnostics on their systems. Chief Engineer Teho was checking power readings on his console. Report, Dongwu said as he took his captain's chair. Sir, we were awakened by automatic protocols. An unknown vessel has been scanning us with deep penetration sensors, Boram said. The scans were strong enough to trigger our defensive wake-up systems. Show me the ship. The main screen displayed a sleek vessel about half a kilometer away. It was beautiful in its own way, with smooth curves and elegant lines. It looked nothing like human ships, which were built for function over form. Analysis? Dongwu asked. Unknown design, sir. Not in our database. The ship appears to be exploratory rather than military. Flight weapons, advanced sensors, diplomatic configuration. Teho looked up from his engineering station. Captain, all systems are coming online normally. Reactors at 70% and climbing. Weapon systems will be ready in 8 minutes. Any communication attempts from the other ship? Yes, sir, said Communications Officer Heywan from her station. They sent several standard greeting messages before they began scanning us. Universal peace protocols. Dongwu nodded. This was a first contact situation then. The other ship had found them, tried to communicate, and when they got no response, had scanned them to see if they needed help. It was actually quite reasonable behavior. Medical Officer Jihai to Bridge, came a voice over the speakers. Go ahead, Doctor. Sir, revival procedures are proceeding normally. All crew members are awakening without complications. However, I should warn you that we have been in hibernation for longer than planned. Some crew members may need time to adjust. Understood. How long were we out? Approximately 14 months, sir. Much longer than the 6 months we expected for the patrol. Dongwu frowned. They had been on a deep space patrol along the outer edge of human territory when their long-range sensors had detected unusual energy readings. They had gone to investigate but found nothing. The decision had been made to enter hibernation and drift while passive sensors continued monitoring. Sir, Boram said, I'm detecting more activity from the unknown vessel. Their crew appears to be in some kind of alert status. Weapons Officer Kyung Min to Bridge, came another voice. Report. Sir, All weapon systems will be online in 6 minutes. I have target locks on the unknown vessel. Orders? Maintain locks but do not power weapons to full charge. We don't want to seem threatening. Dongwu studied the alien ship on his screen. It was clearly not built for war. The hull was thin, the weapons were small, and the entire design suggested a peaceful species. But looks could be deceiving. Hey one, open a channel to the other ship. Channel open, sir. Dongwu looked directly at the camera that would transmit his image to the aliens. He kept his expression calm and professional, though he knew his cybernetic implants made him look more intimidating than he intended. I am Captain Dongwu of the human vessel Indomitable Will. You have been scanning our ship. Please explain why. The response came quickly. The alien commander appeared on screen. He was blue-skinned with large eyes and a nervous expression. When he spoke, his voice shook slightly. Greetings, Captain Dongwu. I am Commander Velthar of the Veltharian exploration ship Eternal Vigilance. We represent the Galactic Consortium. We scanned your vessel because you did not respond to our communications, and we wanted to ensure you did not require assistance. Dongwu nodded. I see, we were in hibernation. Your scans triggered our automatic revival systems. Hibernation? Velthar looked confused. For how long? 14 months. The alien commander's eyes went wide. 14 months? That is a very long time to sleep. Standard procedure for long patrols. Dongwu said simply. What is this Galactic Consortium you mentioned? We are an organization of peaceful species who work together for mutual benefit. We explore space, share knowledge, and help each other grow and prosper. Dongwu found this interesting. A galactic organization of multiple species. Humans had suspected such things might exist, but this was their first confirmed contact. How many species are in your consortium? Currently 43 member races with several more under consideration for membership. And you explore space looking for new species to invite? Yes, exactly. When we encounter new civilizations, we study them and determine if they would be compatible with our values of peace and cooperation. Dongwu almost smiled. These aliens had no idea what they had stumbled across. I see, and what have your scans told you about humans? Velthar hesitated. Your species is unique. We have never encountered beings quite like you before. In what way? Your ship is very heavily armed, much more so than any vessel we have seen, and your biological readings are quite unusual. Unusual how? Your bone density is much higher than normal. You appear to have redundant organ systems. Your brain activity suggests a predatory intelligence that we have not observed in any civilized species. Navigator Insu looked up from his station. Captain, I'm detecting several other ships in the area. They appear to be part of the same fleet as our visitors. How many? 3 more ships, sir. All similar design to the one we're talking to. Dongwu considered this, a small exploration fleet, probably conducting a survey of this region of space. They had stumbled across the Indomitable Will by accident. Commander Velthar, Dongwu said, would you be interested in a cultural exchange? We could share information about our species and learn more about your consortium. The alien commander looked relieved. That would be very welcome, Captain. We believe that understanding between species is the foundation of peace. Excellent. Perhaps we could exchange some basic information about our civilizations? Of course. What would you like to know? Dongwu thought carefully. These aliens seemed peaceful, but they were clearly part of a large organization. It would be useful to learn more about them before revealing too much about humanity. Tell me about your technology. How do you travel between stars? We use quantum tunneling drives that can achieve faster than light travel. Our ships can cross the galaxy in a matter of months. Impressive. And your weapons technology? Velthar looked uncomfortable. We prefer not to focus on weapons. The consortium believes that conflicts should be resolved through negotiation and compromise. But you do have weapons? Basic defensive systems only. Enough to protect against space debris and minor threats. Dongwu nodded. I understand. And tell me, Commander, in all your explorations, have you ever encountered any hostile species? Hostile? Velthar seemed shocked by the question. Captain, all intelligent species are capable of reason. When properly approached, any civilization can be brought to understand the benefits of peaceful cooperation. Security Chief Yunji caught Dongwu's eye and shook her head slightly. These aliens had no concept of real warfare or genuine threats. They had been lucky so far, but their luck wouldn't last forever in a dangerous galaxy. That is a very optimistic view, Commander, Dongwu said. I hope you are right. Commander Velthar tried to remain calm as the human captain stared at him from the screen. There was something deeply unsettling about the creature's eyes. They were intelligent, yes, but cold in a way that reminded Velthar of the ancient predators from his homeworld's prehistoric past. Commander, Science Officer Catherine whispered from her station, the energy readings from their ship are incredible. Their main reactor produces more power than our entire fleet combined. Velthar nodded slightly, not wanting to alarm the humans. Captain Dongwu, we would very much like to learn more about human civilization. Perhaps we could exchange cultural databases? The human captain seemed to consider this. Half of his face was covered in metal implants that glowed softly in the dim light of his bridge. It was clear evidence of extensive cybernetic enhancement, something the consortium had banned centuries ago as barbaric. That sounds reasonable, Captain Dongwu said. We can provide you with basic information about human culture and history. Excellent. We will prepare our own cultural package for you as well. Within minutes, the data exchange began. Velthar watched as information flowed between the ships. At first, the human data seemed normal enough. Pictures of their homeworld, basic information about their government and society, their achievements in art and science. But then Catherine began to find the darker files. Commander, she said quietly, you need to see this. Velthar walked over to her station, keeping one eye on the main screen where Captain Dongwu waited patiently. What he saw on Catherine's monitor made his blood run cold. The humans had included historical records in their cultural database. But these were not the peaceful development stories that every civilized species shared. These were records of war, genocide, and destruction on a scale that was almost impossible to believe. This cannot be accurate, Velthar whispered. I have checked the data 3 times, sir. According to these records, humans fought a global war that killed over 50 million of their own species. And that was just one war. They have had hundreds of them. Velthar read through the files with growing horror. The humans had invented weapons designed specifically to kill as many people as possible. They had dropped nuclear bombs on their own cities. They had used poison gas against enemy soldiers. They had committed acts of genocide that wiped out entire populations. Sir, Catherine continued, it gets worse. These records show that after they achieved spaceflight, they continued the same behavior. They have fought wars against other human colonies. They have destroyed entire planets. That must be historical data from their primitive past, Velthar said, hoping he was right. No, sir. The most recent entries are from less than 50 years ago. There are records of something called the Centauri Wars, where humans fought against other humans across multiple star systems. On the main screen, Captain Dongwu spoke again. Commander Velthar, I hope you are finding our cultural information educational. Very much so, Captain. Your species has a very extensive military history. The human captain smiled, and somehow that made him even more frightening. Yes, we have learned many hard lessons about survival over the years. Medical Officer Ji-Hai appeared on the screen next to Captain Dongwu. She was smaller than the captain, but had the same cold, calculating look in her eyes. Commander Velthar, I understand your people are interested in biological data. I can provide you with information about human physiology if you would like. That would be very helpful, Velthar managed to say. Within seconds, new data began flowing to their ship. Catherine's eyes went wide as she read the medical files. Commander, she whispered, these creatures are built for war. The human biological data was terrifying. Humans had bone density 3 times higher than any known species. Their muscle structure was designed for explosive power and endurance. Their nervous system could function normally even with massive physical damage. But the most frightening discovery was their brain structure. Humans had evolved as pack hunters, with neural pathways that allowed them to coordinate complex group attacks against prey. They could work together to kill creatures much larger and more powerful than themselves. Sir, Catherine said, reading more of the medical data, they have redundant organ systems. A human can survive the loss of major organs that would kill any other species, and their pain tolerance is incredibly high. What does that mean? It means they can continue fighting even when severely injured. A wound that would incapacitate one of us would barely slow them down. On the screen, Weapons Officer Kyung Min joined the conversation. He was a large human with scars covering his arms and neck. Commander Velthar, Captain Dongwu tells me you are interested in our technology. Would you like to know about our defensive systems? Velthar wanted to say no, but he knew he needed to understand what they were dealing with. Please. Our ship carries standard armaments for a patrol vessel. We have kinetic kill vehicles that can destroy targets at ranges of up to 1 million kilometers. Our plasma cannons can cut through any known armor. And for larger threats, we carry planet crackers. Planet crackers? Weapons designed to destroy entire worlds. We prefer not to use them, but they are necessary for certain types of threats. Velthar felt like he was going to be sick. These creatures carried weapons that could destroy planets, and they called them standard armaments for a patrol ship. Tactical Officer Zethmar was reading the weapons data on his console. His face had gone pale. "Commander," he said quietly, "their smallest weapons are more powerful than our main guns, and they have thousands of them." "How many crew members do you have, Captain?" Velthar asked, trying to keep his voice steady. 8,000 for this mission," Captain Dongwu replied casually. "A bit understaffed, but we make do. 8,000 trained killers on a single ship." Velthar's entire fleet had fewer than 200 crew members. Historian Sung Ho appeared on the screen next. He looked friendly and cheerful, completely different from the intimidating soldiers they had seen so far. "Commander Velthar, I am excited to share our cultural achievements with you. Humans have a very rich history of art, literature, and scientific advancement." "That sounds wonderful," Velthar said, grateful to hear about something other than weapons. "Oh yes, we have learned so much over the years. For example, our early wars taught us the importance of logistics and supply lines. The nuclear age showed us the value of first strikes and total victory. And our expansion into space has demonstrated the need for rapid response to potential threats." Velthar realized with horror that even their historians spoke about war and destruction as educational experiences. To humans, violence was not something to be avoided, but something to be perfected. "We have also had many interesting encounters with other species during our expansion," Sung Ho continued happily. "Each contact has taught us valuable lessons about galactic politics and the importance of being prepared for any situation." "Other species?" Velthar asked. "Oh yes, we have met several civilizations over the past century. Most were quite aggressive, unfortunately. But we were able to resolve those conflicts efficiently." "What happened to those species?" Sung Ho's smile never wavered. "Well, they are no longer a concern. We learned early on that half measures in dealing with hostile aliens only lead to more problems later. It is much better to be thorough." Velthar understood exactly what the human meant, and the knowledge filled him with terror. These creatures had encountered other spacefaring species, and they had wiped them out completely. "How many species have you encountered?" Velthar asked, though he was afraid of the answer. 14 confirmed hostile contacts, several others that were resolved through negotiation and relocation. Relocation? Yes, we found suitable planets for them far from human space. Everyone was much happier with that arrangement. Velthar was beginning to understand that when humans said relocation, they probably meant something very different from what civilized species would consider acceptable. The data continued to flow between the ships, and with each new piece of information, Commander Velthar felt his understanding of the universe crumbling. Everything the Galactic Consortium believed about civilized behavior was being destroyed by the cheerful explanations of the human crew. "Commander," Science Officer Kethrin called quietly, "I am finding references to something called the Expansion Wars in their historical database." "What about them?" "Sir, according to these records, humans fought a series of wars against their own colonies that lasted for 30 years. The death toll was over 2 billion humans." Velthar stared at the numbers. 2 billion. That was more than the total population of most consortium worlds. But that's not the worst part, sir. The records show that humans use something called orbital bombardment as a standard tactic. They would destroy entire cities from space rather than fight ground battles. On the main screen, Captain Dongwu was speaking with someone off camera. When he turned back, his expression was pleasant but somehow more intense. "Commander Velthar, my crew tells me you are very interested in our history. That is excellent. Understanding between species is very important for good relationships." "Yes, Captain. Your people have had many educational experiences. Indeed, we have. Each conflict has taught us valuable lessons about efficiency and resource management." Navigator Insu appeared on screen beside the captain. He was younger than the others but had the same cold intelligence in his eyes. "Commander Velthar, I have been analyzing your ship's design. Very elegant. clearly built by a peaceful species that values beauty and comfort over practical concerns. Thank you. We believe that our ship should reflect our values. Of course, humans take a different approach. Our ships are designed purely for function. Speed, firepower, armor, endurance. Everything else is secondary. That makes sense for a military vessel. Insu smiled. Oh, this is not a military vessel, Commander. This is just a standard patrol ship. Our actual warships are much larger and more heavily armed. Velthar felt his heart skip a beat. If this massive, heavily armed battleship was just a patrol vessel, what were their real warships like? Security Chief Yunji joined the conversation. She was a small woman but moved with the fluid grace of a trained killer. Her eyes constantly scanned the screen as if looking for threats even during a peaceful conversation. Commander Velthar, Captain Dongwu has asked me to discuss security protocols with you. We want to ensure that this meeting remains peaceful and productive. Of course. We have no hostile intentions. Excellent. However, I should inform you that we have been monitoring your ship since you arrived in this system. Monitoring us? Standard procedure. Your vessel has been tracked by our passive sensors for the past several hours. We also have target locks on all of your ships. Velthar's blood went cold. All of our ships? Yes, your 3 companion vessels. They're approximately 4 light hours away, correct? We detected them when they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Tactical Officer Zethmar looked up from his station with panic in his eyes. The humans had somehow detected ships that were far beyond normal sensor range and had been tracking them without anyone realizing it. How did you detect our other ships? Velthar asked. Humans have very good sensors, Yunji said simply. We have learned that it is important to know about everything in the area before making contact with new species. Are we in danger? Not at all, as long as this conversation continues to go well. We prefer peaceful solutions to conflicts. The way she said it made it clear that humans were very capable of non-peaceful solutions if needed. Intelligence Officer Min Ho appeared on the screen next. He was older than the others, with gray hair and a face marked by years of hard experience. Commander Velthar, I have been studying the data you shared about your Galactic Consortium. Very interesting organization. Thank you. We are quite proud of our achievements. 43 member species, all living in peace and harmony. How do you handle disagreements between species? Through negotiation and compromise. All conflicts can be resolved through patient discussion and mutual understanding. That is a very optimistic view. Have you never encountered a species that refused to negotiate? No. All intelligent beings can be reasoned with if approached correctly. Minho nodded thoughtfully. Humans have had different experiences. We have found that some species are fundamentally incompatible with peaceful coexistence. What do you mean? We have encountered several species that viewed all other forms of life as either food or threats to be eliminated. No amount of negotiation could convince them to change their behavior. But surely there must have been some way to reach an understanding. We tried, Commander. For years we attempted diplomatic solutions, but eventually we learned that some problems cannot be solved with words. Velthar was beginning to understand that humans had a very different definition of solving problems than civilized species. Did Medical Officer Jihai return to the screen with additional data? Commander Velthar, I have prepared a more detailed analysis of human biology that might interest you. Please proceed. Humans evolved on a world with extremely high gravity and a very dangerous environment. Our planet was filled with predators that were larger and stronger than early humans. To survive, we had to become smarter, faster, and more aggressive than anything else on our world. The medical data that accompanied her explanation was terrifying. Humans came from a world where everything was trying to kill them. They had survived by becoming the most dangerous predators on their planet. Our high bone density comes from the heavy gravity. Our redundant organs developed because injury and disease were constant threats. Our pack hunting behavior evolved because individual humans could not survive alone against larger predators. And your brain structure? Designed for tactical thinking and rapid decision-making under extreme stress. Humans can process multiple threats simultaneously and coordinate complex group responses in real time. Velthar realized that humans were not just physically dangerous. They were mentally evolved for warfare. Every aspect of their biology was designed for survival in a hostile environment. But surely your species has evolved beyond such primitive behaviors now that you have achieved space travel? Velthar asked hopefully. Jihai looked confused. Why would we do that? These traits have served us very well in space. The galaxy is even more dangerous than our homeworld was. More dangerous? Oh yes, at least on our homeworld we understood the threats. In space we have encountered forms of danger that our ancestors could never have imagined. Historian Sung-Ho returned to the conversation with more cheerful explanations. Commander Velthar, I want to tell you about humanity's greatest achievement, the unification of our species. That sounds wonderful. Yes, it took us several centuries and many wars, but we finally learned to work together against external threats instead of fighting each other. How did you achieve this unity? Well, it began during the first alien contact. A species called the Vakthari landed on our homeworld and demanded that humans surrender and become their slaves. Velthar felt a chill run down his spine. What happened? The threat of alien invasion made humans realize that our differences were less important than our survival as a species. We put aside our conflicts and worked together to defend our world. And the Vakthari? They no longer exist, Sung-Ho said with the same cheerful smile. The war lasted 3 years, but it taught humans the importance of unity and preparation. We learned that the galaxy was full of hostile species that would destroy us if we were not strong enough to defend ourselves. So the threat of alien invasion united your species? Exactly. It was wonderful. For the first time in our history, all humans were working toward the same goal. We developed new technologies, built massive fleets, and trained entire populations for warfare. The experience transformed us from a divided species into a unified force. Velthar understood now that humans had achieved peace among themselves by becoming collectively focused on destroying external threats. They had not evolved beyond their violent nature. They had simply learned to direct it outward against other species. Commander Velthar was about to ask another question when alarms began sounding throughout the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance. The lights changed from their normal soft blue to harsh warning red. Commander, Science Officer Catherine called out in panic. Multiple contacts appearing on sensors. What do you mean appearing? Ships, sir? Dozens of them. They are decloaking all around us. Velthar spun around to look at the tactical display. His heart nearly stopped beating. The empty space around them was suddenly filled with massive human warships. They had been surrounded without realizing it. How many? He whispered. 37 vessels, sir. All of them larger than the ship we have been talking to. On the main screen, Captain Dongwu smiled apologetically. I hope you are not alarmed, Commander. The rest of our fleet has arrived for the cultural exchange. Your fleet? Yes, we rarely operate alone. Space can be very dangerous. Navigator Insu appeared on screen again. Commander Velthar, I should mention that we have been tracking your movements for the past 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Yes, since you entered what we consider human space. We detected your ships when you crossed our outer sensor perimeter. Velthar felt the universe spinning around him. Human space? Oh yes, Insu said cheerfully. This entire region has been under human control for several decades. We are surprised that your galactic consortium was not aware of this. Communications Officer Hei Wan joined the conversation. Commander, we have been monitoring your communications with your home base. We hope you do not mind, but we wanted to understand your intentions before making formal contact. You have been listening to our private communications, standard security procedure. We have learned that it is important to understand a species' true intentions rather than just their public statements. Velthar looked at his crew. They were all staring at their instruments in shock. The humans had been watching them for weeks, listening to their communications and tracking their every move. Sir, Tactical Officer Zethmar said quietly, the human ships have us completely surrounded. Every escape route is blocked. Are their weapons powered? All of them, sir. Every human vessel has target locks on us. On the screen, a new figure appeared. This was clearly a high-ranking officer. He was massive even by human standards, with cybernetic enhancements covering most of his head and arms. His eyes were cold and calculating like a machine built for war. Commander Velthar, I am Admiral Jae-Hyun of the Human Defense Fleet. Welcome to human space. Admiral, Velthar managed to say, we did not realize this region was claimed by your species. That is understandable. We prefer to keep our borders somewhat flexible. It helps us monitor potential threats more effectively. Are we considered a threat? That depends entirely on your intentions, Commander. Captain Dongwu has been sharing some very interesting information with me about your galactic consortium. Velthar felt sweat beading on his forehead. We come in peace, Admiral. We are explorers, not conquerors, of course, and we appreciate peaceful intentions. However, we have learned to be cautious about organizations that claim to represent multiple species. Why is that? Captain So Young appeared on screen next to the Admiral. She was smaller than the other humans but radiated the same dangerous competence. Commander, we have encountered 3 other galactic consortiums over the past century. Each one claimed to be peaceful and to represent the interests of multiple species. What happened to them? They no longer exist, she said simply. Each organization turned out to be controlled by a single aggressive species that used the others as slaves or cannon fodder. When we discovered the truth, we had to take action. Take action? Yes. We liberated the enslaved species and removed the threat. Admiral Jae-hyun continued the explanation. Commander, in our experience, any organization that grows to include 43 different species must be using some form of coercion to maintain control. Peaceful cooperation on that scale is simply not possible. But we truly are peaceful, Velthar protested. I'm sure you believe that. But consider this. How does your consortium handle species that refuse to join? We respect their decision and leave them alone. Always? Velthar hesitated. There had been some species that the consortium had been forced to encourage, to see the benefits of membership. Well, sometimes we need to help them understand the advantages of cooperation. And if they still refuse, we have economic and political tools to encourage compliance. Admiral Jae-hyun nodded. So you do use coercion. You simply call it something else. Velthar realized that the humans had trapped him into admitting that the consortium was not as purely peaceful as they claimed. But surely they could understand that some pressure was necessary to maintain galactic order. Intelligence Officer Minho reappeared on screen. Commander, we have been analyzing the data you provided about consortium member species. We find several concerning patterns, such as many of your member species show signs of population decline and reduced technological development since joining the consortium. This suggests that membership is not as beneficial as you claim. That is not true. All member species benefit from consortium membership. Yet your own data shows that most member species contribute more resources to the consortium than they receive in return. Only a few core species, including your own, show net benefits from the arrangement. Velthar felt panic rising in his chest. The humans were dissecting the consortium's power structure with terrifying efficiency. They understood exactly how the organization really worked. Security Chief Yunji spoke next. Commander, we have also noticed that your exploration fleets always include representatives from multiple species, but the command positions are always held by Veltharians or other core species. This suggests a hierarchy based on species rather than merit. We simply place the most qualified individuals in positions of authority, and it is just a coincidence that the most qualified individuals always come from the same few species? Velthar had no answer for that. The truth was that core species did dominate the consortium's power structure, but it was for the good of all members. Lesser species needed guidance from more advanced civilizations. Admiral Jae-hyun seemed to read his thoughts. Commander, we have seen this pattern before. A powerful species conquers others, then claims to be helping them for their own good. The conquered species are told they are partners, but they are actually slaves. We are not conquerors, perhaps not in the traditional sense, but you have created a system where 43 species serve the interests of a few core worlds. You call it cooperation, but it is just a more sophisticated form of empire. Captain So Young added, the most dangerous empires are often the ones that convince themselves they are being benevolent. Velthar looked around his bridge. His crew was listening to this conversation with growing fear. The humans were not just militarily superior, they were intellectually devastating. They had analyzed the consortium's structure and revealed its true nature in minutes. What do you want from us? Velthar asked. Admiral Jae-hyun's expression softened slightly. Commander, humans do not seek conquest. We want to live in peace. But we have learned that peace requires strength and vigilance, and know what happens now. Now you have a choice. You can return to your consortium and recommend that they establish peaceful relations with humanity. We can work together as equals, trading information and resources for mutual benefit. And if the consortium refuses? The Admiral's expression hardened. Then we will classify the consortium as a potential threat to human security, and we will respond accordingly. Velthar understood exactly what that meant. The humans would do to the consortium what they had done to the other galactic organizations they had encountered. However, Captain Dongwu interjected, we prefer not to fight if it can be avoided. War is wasteful and destructive. We would much rather have the consortium as an ally than as an enemy. But you must understand, Admiral Jaehyun continued, that any alliance would need to be between equals. The current consortium power structure would need to change. All member species would need to have real representation and real benefits from membership. That would mean completely restructuring our entire civilization. Yes, the Admiral said calmly, but it would also mean survival. The choice is yours, Commander.